Welcome to the first episode of Riled, a podcast created to showcase conversations with people that I find interesting, particularly around the esports space. I aim to highlight the psychology of players and creative minds and give people another perspective on the personalities within their industry. I competed professionally for 3 years in Valorant, and I chased that dream for 7 years prior. Over that time, I met so many amazing people, some I'm lucky enough to call my best friends. Today, I'll be interviewing one of them, Roy Ahad, better known as StrongLegs. Roy has had an incredible career and wears many hats, from analysis to commentating, playing to coaching, and Counter-Strike to Valorant. Roy knows more than anyone what it takes to pursue a career in esports. We'll discuss his highs, his lows, his past, and his plans for the future, anything to get his insights on the world of professional gaming. This episode was recorded on the 4th of October, and unfortunately, during production, parts of the video and audio were corrupted, so it'll only be audio for this first episode. If you enjoyed this content, please like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment with any advice that you could give me for the future. Now, please join me in welcoming my good friend, Roy Ahad. All right, are you ready?
Ready, Freddie.
All right. So we first met at Fragadelphia 9 in 2016, both competing under Insomnia Esports. When we were obviously the B team, you had just qualified for Premier or MDL, which it had just gone under at the time. Since that time, you've signed to Renegades, created your own project rosters, joined Analyst desks, and most recently started to produce some amazing informative content on your channels. What's been the most rewarding part of your career so far?
Oh, that's a good one. I think the most rewarding part of my career has been this sort of development of myself, and not only myself, but watching, like, I've just been around esports for so long at this point that I've also seen so many other people develop into these like awesome positions within the community and within esports in general. Like watching these kids who were like 13, 14 at the time. Now they're like, 22, 21 years old, and they all have like insane careers, and just seeing the growth and kind of like the evolution and like the ebb and flow of like every person around me has been like extremely fun, extremely rewarding. But yeah, like specifically for myself, I think in esports specifically, like when I was competing, I think for me, man, like honestly, it's been like how to maneuver myself in this leadership position, and how to like what it really means to like be a leader, what it really means to like lead a team, how to create environments, how to create like a good culture within a team dynamic. Like these things are honestly feel so hard to like find like information on, right? Like it's so hard to find resources on these things, and like it's so intangible. And I feel like I've learned something that is quite difficult to get a grasp of, and I think that's going to be helping me a lot, like throughout my life and throughout my relationships with people, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of underwent a little bit in terms of the leadership perspective, the same change going from a player to an IGL, and then I coached for a little bit too and had a stint there. And the biggest thing for me transitioning from a player to a leader, like the leap was it felt so big at the time, but now retrospect, it seems a little bit easier to kind of explain my thought processes, and when I was working with my players and players that I had coached, to voice how I felt. And I think for a while it took me a long time to find that voice on the teams that were looking to me for leadership. Coach Jay, when I was playing under him, and I think you know Justin.
Yeah.
He recommended a book by Jocko Willink to me about leadership.
Oh yeah, he loves Jocko.
He loves Jocko.
He loves Jocko.
And at the time I was like, man, Justin, I know you're in love with this guy and you're infatuated with him, but I'll give it a read. And so we were at boot camp, and he gave me a copy of this book, and I think we were in Philadelphia for probably 2 or 3 weeks. And I spent my nights reading the book, and it actually, any resource that I could have recommended to any leaders, would have probably been to read this book on that Jocko had written, which basically just stated, how you treat your players or your teammates in any competitive or high tense scenario. It differs player by player. And that's something that it took a lot for me to materialize with my teams, where, my lurker or whoever it might be might
Hmm.
need a little bit more guidance and say, hey, more reasoning. I don't know if we should be doing this. Have you thought about trying it this way? Whereas my entry fragger, who is, might be more point A to point B, peanut brain, monkey mode, whatever you want to call it, might just be, don't go in right now. And then that's it. And even though that sounds so simple, stepping into that leadership role, it took a lot for me to recognize when and where to apply different teaching and learning
Yeah,
modes to different players.
for
And
sure.
and even in my short time playing with you, that's something that I learned a lot from you too. And
Oh,
when you had talked to me at Fragadelphia, just understanding myself, how I want to be guided by an in-game leader and how I want to contribute to the team is something that
hmm
you kind of instilled to me in that short amount of time, and that I also learned through just hours and hours of trying to coach my guys up. But what are your current goals for the future? You've stepped into a bunch of different roles: player,
Oh, dude.
leader, commentator, caster. You wear a bunch of different hats. So what are your current goals?
Yeah, dude, I wear maybe too many hats, I think, at this point. I think my goal for me is to just establish a lifestyle. Like, it's not really a specific thing. Like, I'm not trying to be like, oh, this insane, well-known content creator. Like, I'm not really trying to do any of that stuff specifically. I think I'm just trying to actually think of a lifestyle that I would want for myself and then sort of build around it from there. Like, dude, I love being like, I'm a homebody. Like, I just want to be able to do my content from home, be able to do whatever I do from home, and just have like a lifestyle that just allows me to be with my two furry animals and just allow me to be with my partner and just enjoy life and just kind of do things in my own way and not feel so like restricted by like a specific schedule. I say that, but like I also work probably more hours than like most people do, so it's like I don't know how much more freedom I have, but yeah, so it's just I just want to create like my own lifestyle that I think fits my sort of goals and sort of like my vision of how I think I would find a meaningful life. I think that's kind of like my main priorities. But in terms of like career goals, um, I definitely do want to up my content game. I think being a content creator is really cool. I think being able to kind of provide like casual viewers a sort of glimpse into like a professional mindset, into like strategy, like you kind of understand, right? Because we competed for a long time. Like strategy is so fascinating, and it's like there's so much fundamentals and there's so much logic to what people are doing, and it's like all of that gets lost on broadcasts, right? Because like if you're a commentator, like you gotta like go with what is obvious. It's kind of hard to like pick up on all the intangibles and like all these little hidden details, and like you kind of just have to choose one thing and focus on it, right? And like when you're on an analyst desk, like I'm an analyst for challengers, right? Like, dude, I have like 1 minute to 2 minutes in between segments to get my thoughts out on things. Like that is like impossible to go in depth on it. You know what I mean? So it's like a lot of the viewers just like don't really understand parts of the game that they just can't see, right? So it's like being content creator for that aspect has been like really fun. Just creating content for just people to nerd out over Valorant, do like just keep it chill, kind of just help them out and just like kind of create an environment or like a place where people can like collectively just nerd out on a specific topic. Like that is the ultimate goal, right? Like we all want community, and I feel like it's kind of hard for people to find like that sort of thing online these days, even though like it should not be this hard, but it is somehow, right? Where it's like, dude, I have so many people in my Discord, like literally hundreds of people in my Discord, and like they love it there. They're always active, they're always interacting. They like, they find people to play with. They ask questions. It's like there's so much happening in that community, and like it's just so rare to find places right now online that are like specific to what you want in like such an active community. So like my content is just like essentially like a funnel for everyone to just like being like, oh, dude, this guy makes really cool content, but he also has a really cool community, and I kind of want to be there. I kind of want to enjoy the game and have people to like nerd out with and just sort of like belong, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're doing a great job, at least, of bridging the gap between. Oh, there was a period of time where Sean Garrers and DDK were both casting VCT
Hmm.
games and the events early on in Valorant. And one thing that they always got a bunch of praise for was making all of the high level decisions understandable and digestible for anyone watching the
Yes.
game. And I think that is so understated now.
Hmm.
And just watching some of your content, it's really nice to see that not only are you making content for anyone to understand and digest, but if there's a player who, say, is competing in tier 3, tier 4, tier whatever, Valorant, or even tier 2 or tier 1, there's something to take away from that. And watching your broadcasts over the last Challenger Ascension tournament, you do such a great job of exactly that, where you're, even though you don't have a lot of time.
Yeah, it's hard, man. It's really hard.
It's hard to get those bits of, okay, they did this, and that in 25 rounds, and there's so many cool things, but I only have a certain amount of time to really convey all of that stuff. Because a lot of the time when someone's watching a game and they don't necessarily understand a lot of the things that are happening besides for what the observer is looking at in that moment, it's really cool for you to be able to say, hey, I know you're paying attention to this sick clip that this guy hit, but look at the minimap and look at what this guy's doing, and look at everything that got set up in this moment, in this round, for this to happen. Yeah, and coming from especially the perspective of a former professional player and someone who played at such a high level, there's so much validity to that. There's you can not only break it down, but you could see it as it's happening and give players the why. That's something that I look for when I'm watching any new game, like Rocket League. I don't understand a thing about Rocket League, but if I watch a Rocket League stream and someone says, look at these two guys setting up him 45 seconds earlier for this goal, I'm like, damn, I didn't even notice that any of that happened.
Exactly.
Like, and if you could bring that to the viewer, bring that to a competitor watching it, your long form content is so good at that, I feel. Bringing the why to the game is so important, especially now.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think that you're doing a great job, and I love watching your broadcast. It's really refreshing to see, even at the Ascension and Challengers level, that there's this thought and that there's this depth into the game.
Oh yeah, for sure. Sometimes more. And Nerd Street shot a docuseries following you and a recollection of your life story and what led you to esports. For anyone who hasn't seen it, you were born in Lebanon, were introduced to the world of video games primarily through PC bongs, and moved to Canada when you were young due to war. At exactly what age did you move? Did you experience culture shock after the move? And how long did it take for you to get back onto a computer? Dude. Okay, so context, I actually was born in Canada, but we moved back and forth a lot. But in my conscious years, I'd moved back to Canada when at the end of grade 5, beginning of grade 6. And yeah, it was a massive culture shock. One, there was a huge language barrier. Dude, I spoke only Arabic and French. I kind of knew English, but there's so many words that I didn't know. I have this one very weird memory. It's been in my head for so long, but I was on the bus, and for some reason I wanted a cup of water, or a cup. And I was asking this kid, yo, do you know what a cup is? But I didn't know what the word cup was. So I said it to him in Arabic, hoping he would know what that is. And the guy just looks at me and he's like, bro, what? I was I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. I don't know why that just stuck with me, but it's just so silly. But yeah, there's a lot of I don't know if culture shock is the word, but there's definitely a massive change in lifestyle, and also a huge language barrier that took me a long time to get over, probably a few years at least. Fortunately, I did go to a French school, and I spoke French, so that was kind of the bridge between me and a lot of the kids, and that kind of gave me a way to sort of fit in and kind of get along with some of these people. But yeah, that's pretty much mostly the culture shock. I kind of adapted pretty quickly, I think.
Mm-hmm. When did you get back onto a PC? When were you always gaming for the whole time of your childhood, or were there times where you were just fiending to get back on, or?
Yeah, there's a point in my life where we only had one computer, and we had to share it between 3 brothers. So it was me and my 2 brothers. Mm-hmm. And it was I'm the youngest, so I was kind of getting shafted quite often on the computer time. And just they were busy or they weren't home. That would be my time to snack computer time. And then we got 2 computers, and then I was able to find a little bit more time. And eventually I kept getting my brother's hand-me-downs. And honestly, I kind of owe my brother a lot. My oldest brother, Bob, I kind of owe him a lot of he sort of handed me down his computer gear when he could have sold it, back when we were struggling financially, all of us. He could have easily sold it, but he just he's nah, I'm gonna give them a computer. I'm gonna pass this down. It was really, really shit computer, but I was it's a computer, dude. I have my own computer. Yeah, it works. Yeah. And I was that's grade 7. I do. I remember I was playing like Diablo 1 and Diablo 2 back then, actually. That was like what allowed me to learn English, by the way, was Diablo.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's like I ended up getting my own computer like when I was in 7th grade, so that'd be like what, 11, give or take, maybe somewhere around there. So that's kind of when I had like my own PC, and then from there it was just like that's all I did, dude. I don't know. I think I sort of felt alien, like the whole moving back and forth was just like, why should I make friends, bro? Like,
Mhm.
why should a kid make friends when he's just gonna be moving back and forth constantly? Like,
Mhm.
there's really no point. But the internet is kind of like permanent. Like, I can play Diablo in Lebanon. I can play Diablo in Canada. Like, it really doesn't matter. Like, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? That's kind of the power of the internet and the computer is like, I'm connected, and it sort of gave me this like feeling of consistency, like no matter where I move to. And I think that feeling is still with me now. Like, I'm in Toronto for the first year ever in my life. I'm like, it doesn't feel that different. Like, yeah, the view is hella different, but like I still have the same lifestyle. Like, I'm still on my PC all day. I'm still just
Yeah.
gaming, like hanging out with my friends online. Like
All you
nothing
need
has
is the
really
PC
changed.
and the internet, and that's it. You can put me
Yeah,
anywhere.
literally, bro. It does not matter. I do not care where I'm at. Like, actually.
Yeah, I mean, my brother, I had the same relationship with him. He was super into Warcraft when I was younger, and I would
Oh,
just
really?
spend, yeah, I'd spend all
Like
my
Warcraft
time
3?
watching him play. Yeah, Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3,
Oh my
Diablo.
God, that's
He got
crazy.
me into all that, and he would invite all of his friends over. They'd bring all their computers, and I just
Hmm.
watch them. And my dad finally caved. He's like, "All right, here, you could take my old one," and it was just a piece of junk. But I'm
Yeah.
I'm sitting there waiting for before that, waiting for my turn on Counter Strike, waiting for my turn on Warcraft, and then by the time
Love that.
World of Warcraft came out, I was 6 years old. My parents got us both subscriptions, and we were just
Nice.
gaming together ever since. So I
Love
definitely
that.
feel the younger brother vibe
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
just
The
sitting
pass me
there.
downs of
Yeah,
PC parts.
I'm waiting for my monitor's broke. Well, Dean's got to get a new one before I can get mine. So
Oh yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
I definitely feel that. All right. So describe your IGLing style. From micromanaging to freedom and out of server input to having the final say and being the voice of reason, what do you think is the best way to lead?
That's a very good question. I think for me, my IGL style is very fluid. Like I think that is like the one strong suit that I have. I've almost never tried to replicate one team dynamic when I've had completely different players. Like I completely recognize that humans are very unique and you like yeah, sometimes we might have like similar personality traits, but we are all like essentially just unique characters and trying to like recreate a single team environment when you have different players and different personalities doesn't really make sense. So for me, like my strongest suit has always been able to like find a way to like get all these different unique personalities to just like find this way to play the game, find a way to like think about how to play rounds and how to win rounds when like I don't have this kind of player anymore. I don't have this kind of player anymore. You know what I mean? Like the difference between like my roster with Renegades versus, Pretty Boys when I was with like Thwyfo and all those guys. Like every single team that I've been on has been a completely different team. And I don't really cling on to this like notion of like this idea of how the game should be played. I'm more so just like looking at the strengths and weaknesses of my teammates, and then I kind of like go from there. Obviously, sometimes like you do need to kind of put your foot down of like, especially when it comes to like compositions and like deciding on like how to play a certain map. Like it can just be such a time waster to give. This sounds terrible, but like it can be such a massive waste of time to like get everybody's input on everything constantly when you're trying to balance like 6 maps and like the meta. Like like you remember in the early days of Valorant, like the meta was like moving like hella fast, bro, and just like you can't have hour-long discussions on how to play every map every time. It's just like there's just not enough time, right? So it's like being able to like I'm able to put my foot down and be like, ah, dude, just we're running this comp, everyone get in line, like let's get this done. We can compromise on other maps, but on this map, we kind of have to just tighten up and just lock it down with this composition. So I'm like, a lot of it is like that, but in terms of like my prep, in terms of like my sort of like philosophy with team dynamics or like how to balance micromanaging and like freedom, I'm very out of the server base. Like I like to make sure we're all on the same page. Like, hey, we're defaulting because we're looking for the cipher. We're looking to see where they're fighting, and like, okay, as soon as we know, like, we have a couple options, like, you know what I mean? Like, I kind of just try to make sure like we're all on the same page from the beginning before we get into the server. So that way, when we go into the server, we're kind of like all in the same line into like what we're looking for. I know what are the win conditions, what are the meta setups, like how to play around it. Just really like kind of simple stuff. But yeah, like a lot of pre-prep so that we're all like on the same page in the moment. And then from there, it's just like drill, keep drilling until we're all like ultra comfortable and everyone's like very like comfortable and sort of understands their position within the setups and how much agency and freedom they have and just allowing a flow to happen within the team dynamic.
So you'd say that you give your players a lot of freedom to within their role, and
Oh yeah,
did you find that
absolutely.
like they try to make a lot of contributions through that, like and try to direct the team in their way? So, for example, my when I was leading, if I had my Cypher, Killjoy, whatever lurker player on one
Mhm.
side of the map, they would try to, direct the game in their vision without, necessarily seeing everything that's going on. Would you say that you gave your players enough freedom to, voice their opinions where you'd be the voice of reason and put your foot down? Or would you try to hash it out as a team and say, based off of those win conditions that you talked about, based off of those factors and variables that you've seen, because like you said, the early days of the game were crazy.
Oh,
There
insane.
there wasn't a, there were there was a lot of copycat meta. People were running the same comps and same this and
Hmm.
same that, but the variability of the game was so it still is just wild. And at the time, it was still new and crazy, and one raised rocket could win you the whole round. So did you spend a lot of time discussing what ifs based off of someone's vision of the game, or did you just take it as a chip on the shoulder and say, well, we kind of just have to play it as it is?
Um, I definitely took a lot of info from people. Like, if someone was like, "Yo, I'm uncomfortable with my role," or like, "Hey, I don't know what to do here," like, yo, can we try this? Like, can we do this? Like, dude, I will take info from literally anyone. Like, I have no ego when it comes to that. I just like for me, like when it comes to personal freedom, I just want to hear your logic. Like, I don't care if my Sentinel player is an aggressive player. I don't care if my controller player is an aggressive player. But like, I need to know there's like some sort of logic to the decisions, and it's not just like, oh, I'm feeling confident, so I'm peaking this. Because like feelings of confidence and these like sort of like intangible, ephemeral emotions are just such a hard thing to like constantly replicate, right? You understand how it is competing, and then like mental performance is like the biggest wave curve ever, right? Like one day you're hot, one day you're not, you're in a slump, you're losing confidence, you're the best player in the world. Like it's kind of all over the place. So I just like to have like consistency in decision making over like raw emotions to like so I can understand like why you're making this play. Like, oh, I saw four people here. I felt like we were in a disadvantage. I walked down long C. Like, all right, hey, I love that. Go. You have the freedom to do that. That's great. I'm down with that. Like, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
I walked in front B because I know they didn't have op and they have a lot of ults and I'm trying to find like the rotator. Great. That's an amazing go
Mhm.
crazy, right? But if you're like, oh man, yeah, I'm better than these guys. I peeked out garage when I had no idea where anyone was. And like, dude, there could be five people holding you. Like you have no information. Like, what do you mean you just solo pushed out garage? Like no comms, no info, nothing. Like that
Mhm.
doesn't make sense to me, right? Like there are some things to me that make sense and certain things that don't make sense. And I think a lot of that has just been like yeah, you have freedom as long as you can like give me a reason to what you like give me something logical that we can base the entire team around, right? Because
Yeah.
like there has to be some level of compromise, right?
Mhm.
Like you could be the best player in the world, dude, but like so is everybody else. Like they all think the same thing you're thinking. Like you're not special in that regard.
Yeah.
Like dude, the same level of like the same days you wake up thinking you're better than simple. Like so are these other kids, bro. Like all these people are cracked at the game, right? So like
Mhm.
that's not good enough. Like there needs to be like consistency. There needs to be like ways for us to, for as a team to like capitalize because like
Mhm.
seconds matter. Obviously, you know that. So it's like I think there's freedom, but there needs to be like also like rationale to it. And if people, and again, if at any point people feel uncomfortable with their roles, like I'm not stupid, okay? Like if you're not comfortable with a strategy, like I'm not gonna keep forcing it on you.
Mhm.
You're not confident, you're not comfortable. Like it's gonna be pretty hard to find like any sort of flow state. So I like to always like check in with my players too. Like how do you
Yeah.
feel? How do you feel about your role on this map? Are you fine? Are you comfortable? Like is there anything you want to do differently? Like do you feel like we're playing to your strengths? Like I'm always like checking up with my players, bro, like constantly. Like I
Mhm.
don't want people. I value communication, so I try to like get people to like be more open with like, no, I'm not comfortable on this map, or like I don't really know what to do, or like, dude, I play a half and I'm like C every single round. Like that sounds boring. I don't want anyone to do that. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So I'm like, okay, let's like, what can we do? Like, what do you want to do differently? Like, is there any setups you like? You know what I mean? Like, I always take input, bro. Like always, always, always.
Yeah, and those objective opinions matter a lot. As far as I'm not comfortable on this side of the map, I'm not comfortable on this agent. I'd rather play KJ Cypher. I'd rather play Breach Sky. I'd rather play Sova Sky, whatever it might be. Though I tried to take in a lot of those objective, uncomfortable feelings that they were feeling and see if we can reach some sort of middle ground, like you were saying, reach some sort of compromise. But if on a strat someone just doesn't like where they are on the strat but can't really materialize why they don't like the strategy, they just don't feel confident in that area, a lot of the time, 5 people in on a meh idea is better than 3 people in on the fundamentally good decision and then 2 people doing what they thought was right. I'd rather have everyone in on the bad decision. Right. And so for strategy, those, and especially mid-rounding, off of defaults and off of information like that, I usually put my foot down in that sense. It doesn't matter what we do, so long as we all do it together. And that was one of the things that I had preached the most, because I wasn't the perfect IGL. I didn't have the perfect strategies. No one really does, to be completely honest. But it's recognizing in those moments, how can I at least band my guys together to go in on this idea? And then we, based off of everything that we've learned together, how are we going to work our way out of this if we feel like we're in a deficit or in a disadvantageous situation? I think to your point about, if my player goes and just swings out somewhere and his only justification is, I was feeling myself. That's not really good enough, and we kind of have to talk about that.
We have to talk about it.
The micro decisions, to me, definitely need fundamental 5v5 TAC FPS justifications in some sort of way, and that was what I had tried learning with all of my teams, whether or not I was a player or a leader, was getting us all on the same page of, if we're in a 5v4 or a 4v5 on our defense side, we need to equalize. We need to go look for something. We need map control. If we're in a 5v5 and it's stale for 30 or 45 seconds, we get information right here that there's 2 or 3. Let's take map control somewhere else and make it easier for us. A big piece of fundamental FPS knowledge that you preached to me actually was the 2/3 rule. And although it's not entirely perfect all the time,
and Valorant is very different.
Valorant is very different. But we found ways to make it work. There's a lot of weird intricacies that Valorant has as far as utility, the way maps are designed. But we went through every map and we designated, okay, if X happens and they take this area of the map, then Y happens, and then we take this part back. Kind of implementing, overarching fundamental ideas to get us all on the same page, so that way, it doesn't necessarily make up for my perfect strategy or imperfect strategy, but in a way that is the perfect strategy. So long as we all understand the game on a fundamental level the same, whether or not it's inherently right or wrong, if we're all in on it together, then that's the only world that I could truly ask for as a leader when I was in that position too.
Yeah. I mean, I think a perfect example of that is actually like a very practical example is EG on 2023 when they won champs. They're strategically, they had a lot of good ideas for sure. Like, I'm not taking anything away from them, but like you would see them call into sites that had 3 people on them constantly, right? Like if you're an IGL and you're looking at that, you're like, that's not good, because that's where the majority of their defenders are, right? But like, to them, it didn't really matter because their micro synergy was so good that it didn't matter if there was 3 people on the site, because they could just run it down, bro. They had really good synergy. They had really good comms. They had really good utility. And just like, it's exactly to what you were saying, which is like, it's just, they're all in. They're all confident. As long as they have the synergy, like they're doing things together, like realistically, you're going to end up in somewhat of a decent scenario a lot of the times, as long as you can work your way through, right? And I think that micro synergy is like, it kind of stuck with me. And I think since the end of 2022 and like 2023 and like seeing EG and seeing all the, like a lot of these teams, even EDG is kind of like that as well. I think my idea on this game and sort of like my strategy mental or POV, I guess, if you want to call it that, has changed so much. And like, I don't even perfection or like trying to find a perfect way of playing the game is like not even on my mind anymore, bro. Like, now I'm all about like, are my odds good enough in that moment? And if the answer is yes, that's good enough for me. Like, you have a 3v2 take your 3v2. You have a 2v1, take your 2v1 right then and there. Like, just take it, bro. Just, oh, they showed 4 people at Tor Showers in A short. You guys can double walk on this guy long B, double walk on the guy long B. Like, that, good enough for odds for me, bro. I'll take those odds. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so far away from perfect now, and like, I don't care about that anymore, bro. I don't care about perfect map control trading. Like, I don't care about that at all anymore. But like, if you guys can find confidence in your moments, like, oh, we can 2v1 this guy with util, or even like a 2v2 with like full util dumping, like, those are more than 50-50s, bro. Like, as long as it's higher than 50-50 and we're not constantly coin flipping, like, that's good enough. Like, it doesn't need to be any deeper than that. Like, everything else could be layered. Like, yeah, we can min max our util and like alt masking and defaulting and all this other shit, right? But like, realistically, like, as long as people are confident and they have agency and they kind of know where to put it and like they know how to like work together, like, that's really all you need in games like these, bro. And I think we're seeing that a lot more and more now in like more recent Valorant.
Yeah, I towards the end of my time, I was looking purely for those 51% win rates, like 51% and greater. Like, I will take that any day of the week. If it didn't work out, well, everything that we went over said that in our practice, in our offline, in our whatever, we were confident in this. We thought that we could win it, and that's all I really needed as a justification for some of these decisions. Like, I think you bring up a great example with EG and kind of just hitting on 3-man sites. A lot of the time, if we were defaulting on an attack side and we got an opener pick, 95% of the time, ults aside or guns aside or whatever, I would just say everyone group, wait a little bit, everyone group, find a site and just hit it. If we're comfortable hitting the site right now, do it. We're in a 5v4. They can't reasonably have all of their players here right now. We just killed one in wherever. Like, if anything, that's a rotator that's dead, so that makes it a little easier for us later. And so finding those 51% and finding where we're confident in going was a huge part of me injecting my strategy into the team. And so long as I was confident in it, if my leading was effective and if my boys were confident in me, then we were ready to just trample through anything. And I think that matters the most on any team, especially now. Like, you had brought up a great point. Like, all that like theorizing, theory crafting, you could go over a strat a million times, you could dry run it 100 times, and you could think it's perfect. Throw all that out the window. In a way, rely on it, rely on your habits, but at the end of the day, 2v1 is better than a 1v1, and that's all it really is.
That's all it is, bro. Actually, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely has changed a lot since our days, for sure.
Yeah. A lot of people may not know this, but during my initial negotiations with Complexity, we were trialing various combinations of rosters for the team. One of these included you, myself, Linkser, Frisco, and AGM. During scrims, this felt like an incredible team.
Oh, dude, yeah, for sure.
But it unfortunately never came to fruition. What are, if any, some memorable what-if rosters that you could have been a part of if you're comfortable disclosing any of them?
That's a good one. That's a top one. I think the vibes that we had were just immaculate. We had a really good dynamic, and I think that team will never know. I swear we'll never know. I feel like it could have been a very, very good team. We're all like in our peaks. Like, it was just unreal.
I went to bed just giddy every night after practice with that team. Every night. It was never not fun for every second that we were playing together.
Yeah, for sure. There's another roster as well. The team that ended up becoming Exet. So I was with Wifo, Anderson, Pure R. Remember Pure R?
Yeah.
Pure Redfish, that boy. That could have been a really sick roster as well. Also, I was on like this Frankenstein roster. It was me, Anger, Marv, Shanks, and Thief.
Oh, just a ragtag group.
Yeah, bro. Yo, we were a team for like maybe a week and a half. We ended up winning a tournament that was easy as hell. I was like, that roster could have been beast mode as well with like some minor changes and like just some consistency. It would have been an insane roster.
Rise StrongLegs.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Marv obviously went on to do his thing, and Shanks is doing his thing. It's like Thief is now doing his thing as well. So that would have been pretty cool as well. But besides that, I think my last roster was probably my favorite one, to be honest. Not like in terms of like team dynamic, but I feel like the skill ceiling on that roster was actually insane considering like the resources that I had to work with and like the level of budget our team had compared to the other teams that we were playing. Like, dude, okay, it's gonna be really weird, but when I was on Renegades, we played T1 in one of the qualifiers. That was like the VCT qualifier, by the way, back before it was like in partnership league, and we beat T1, and we were always memeing because Steel was making more money than our entire team combined. And I always found that so funny.
Yeah, especially in the early days when all the contracts first started getting sent out, like
insane.
first strike was going on. That was a crazy time. Like when we had first gotten signed to Cole, the conversations of like these guys are making way more than us and we're dogging on them right now it was always in the air, no matter what. Yeah. As an IGL, do you regret letting any players slip through your fingers during trials and tryouts?
Oh, dude, I think an easy one is Trent. The back when he was named Habib, bro. Oh my god, I won't do it. Him and I meme about it all the time. He
I think there's
messaged me.
about a dozen teams that are feeling that.
Yeah, bro. He messaged me the trial. I didn't know. Like I've seen him around, but I didn't really know who he was. Keep in mind, like he was like hella low key back then. Like he was nowhere. He played under the name Habib back then as well,
Just a
and he was
ranked warlord.
yeah. And dude, his VLR stats were actually nice. And I was like, dude, yeah, your stats look good. I'm down to trial you. Then I asked him for his schedule, and it was some hot ass, bro. It was terrible schedule. I think he had like work up until like 6 p.m. or something, and I was like, listen, bro, you look like a good player, but I cannot compromise my team's schedule for you like that. You're just not that guy, pal. You know what I mean? And like he ended up getting signed to the guard.
Craziest runs ever. I remember seeing
dude.
screenshots of like, man, this guy was in my DMs, and I just looked him over, and look at him now. No, I remember playing ranked, and I'd have Habib on the other team. I'm like, dude, I'm getting shit on right now.
Yeah, bro, he's a
what is
demon.
even
He's a
going on?
demon.
He was a demon. And
Yeah, dude.
little do you know. You competed, commentated, and produced content in CS. You competed, commentated, and produced content in Valorant. You've consistently placed yourself in as many sectors of gaming as you possibly can. Has the transition from player to personality, back to player, back to personality been difficult?
Not difficult in like, oh, the skills required are so different that I can't learn it. But it's been difficult in the sense of like the thoughts of like, what if, like, what would have happened had I just stuck to being a player all along? What would have happened if I stuck to being a talent all along? You know what I mean? I think that flip-flopping was really fun, but I do sometimes like wonder like how different would my career be now if I had just started Valorant as a commentator, right? Or like started Valorant or just stuck to being a player now. Like would I be the teams qualifying into partnership right now? Like would I be that guy? Would I be on the top, tier 2 teams? Like where would it be? It's been like, I want to say difficult. It's just been like, there's always been this like glooming like question about like, what would have been if I just stuck to one thing. But honestly, like looking back now, like I don't really regret it. And I think like I would still consider coaching for a competitive team, no doubt. But like my lifestyle now is so chill and such a different pace than it was before. It's just like, it's just hard to think about going back to like competing unless like I was getting like a really good opportunity or like a team that I truly believe in.
Do you miss competition right now?
Yeah, I do miss competing. I think, dude, the one thing that no one ever talks about with competing in gaming, or just probably competing, period, in anything, I'm sure it applies. But like, when you were competing, you always had a really specific thing to work towards. You know what I mean? Like, you're always like, I'm playing to get better. I'm playing to win. I'm playing, like, every day was like, there's routine and there's like this very clear goal of like, I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to win. I'm trying to like get to this level, right? Like when you're in, like now that I'm like, more on the content side, it's like I don't really have like a specific thing that I'm working towards, like yeah, I want my channel to get bigger. Yeah, I want my content to be bigger. Yeah, I want to have a bigger community, but like a more consolidated community as well, not just bigger in quantity. But like it's not as clear. It's not as like direct, it's a little bit more abstract. Like the path is very unclear when it comes to content creation versus like competing, which is like, win tier 2, get to tier 1, play in tier 1. Like, it's very, very like obvious what you're playing towards. And I think that has been like probably the one thing about competing that I miss a lot. Obviously, aside from like the competing and being on a team and stuff like that.
Mhm. Yeah, I think one of the biggest pills to swallow for me, especially stepping back from Valorant for such a long period of time, is M80 for example.
Hmm.
Watching their most recent run in Ascension and the the heartbreak that you could see on camera,
Hmm.
on Twitter, you know, that to me was, I felt it in my heart. I'm not anywhere near that position anymore. And, seeing the emotion that they had poured into it, knowing the amount of hours that they had poured into it, if not more, I know it's more, and how much they wanted it, how close they were. I can't imagine being 2 years in a row right there,
Right.
and in the fashion that it all unfolded. I felt the heartbreak. I felt like I was put right back into that world that I was
Hmm.
in, and it was hard for even me to swallow. I got emotional just thinking about being in that position, just because how it feels. I know how it
For
feels.
sure.
You want it bad. And yeah, like you said, that you wake up every day as a pro player or as a competitor in general when you're grinding, and it obviously you have the looming goal of, I'm going to get better. I want to win. I want to see myself in this position. I want better stats or whatever it
Hmm.
is. But at the end of the day, to reach those goals, it is something clearly tangible in front of you. Luckily, some players have a coach. Luckily, some players have a very caring in-game leader or very caring friend who watches their
Hmm.
games and gives them input and says, watch your timing right here. When you see X, do Y. Various factors that you can implement immediately, and things that you could see immediate gains from if you just start practicing and going into a position where now you're producing content. Now I'm trying to produce content. It is a little bit more abstract. It's a bit more vague,
Hmm.
and it's not a clear, direct. You kind of have to, one, follow your heart just like you would in pro games,
Yeah.
but you also have to go to what keeps the, for one, what keeps the bills paid, and two,
Yep.
what people want to see or this or that. Whereas when you're competing, it's clear, I have to do this, I have to get better, and I got to keep pushing forward. I think that was one of the biggest things transitioning away from competition for me. I just play Counter-Strike twice a week now in
Yeah.
ESEA.
For fun.
So it's a little hard for me to go from trying my ass off every
Hmm.
single day to, okay,
Yep.
now I'm just casually gaming. And looking at players now, I'm sure you feel it, especially because you're still so close with a lot of the players, a lot of the scene. You watch it all the time, you participate, you're a part of the
Hmm.
broadcast, and you know what it takes.
I mean, my
That
partner's still competing too.
exactly. So the itch and the drive is still so close. You're very parallel to it.
Oh, for
and
sure.
and I can definitely relate to that latent desire of, man, I
Yeah.
just I just want to play again.
Yeah,
But
it'd be really fun for sure.
it is two completely different lifestyles.
Oh, absolutely.
Stepping away from the game and being so engulfed and entrenched in it. Looking back now, again, watching tournaments, I feel the pain, I feel the heartache, but I feel the victory. I watching G2, Valen and Jonah P, two of my old teammates, go qualify for champs and make a great run for North America there. That filled me with so much joy just watching it. And that's
Right.
something that I never really got from traditional sports. And so I don't think I could ever really peel myself away from that. I think the case can probably be made for you too. I
Oh yeah,
think
no, no doubt.
I think I'm going to be watching video games till the day that I die.
Oh, dude,
So
I'm gonna be playing, watching, like for
yeah,
sure.
absolutely. And it's always going to be that presence in the back of my mind of, like, yeah, where would I be if I kept going? Where would I be if I kept
Hmm.
trying? Would you have ascended? Would you be fighting for a spot there? I think that question is always going to linger, and I can definitely relate to you on that.
Yeah, going back a point as well about like switch the swap to content creation.
Hmm.
Like with competing, I just see the meme in my head about like I need to get better at Valorant. I need to get better at Valorant. I need to get better at Valorant. Have you seen that meme before?
Yeah, yeah, it's just never ending.
It's just never ending cycle. But yeah, when it comes to content creation, um, it's really weird because the only thing that you have to measure your own success is metrics, which is like, is the video doing well? Like, right? Like there are some small things like, yeah, my quality of content is going up every video because I'm learning from every other video, right? Like the scripting is getting better, the pacing, the meat of the video itself is improving. But like some videos are getting 200K views, and then some videos are getting 10K views, and it's just like, is my 10K view a failure? Like, because but what else do I have to go off of? Like I have nothing else to go off of. Like is a 10K view video a failure when you're getting 200Ks on some other videos, right? And it's just like this constant battle of like, should I be focused on the quality of work that I produce, or should I be trying to like get metrics? Because I could technically create the best videos the world has ever seen, but like if only 5,000 people are watching it, and it's just like at some point I just can't justify the cost of the video, like because you have to pay editors, you have to pay designers, you got to, you know what I mean? Like there's the whole team behind these projects. It's not just you, right? And just
Yeah.
like, it's just so weird to like transition from like the goal of winning to like now trying to create like metric based, analysis videos and stuff like that.
And I think that there's definitely a way to gamify any system that you put yourself into. And
Hmm.
you'll see the same thing with, former professional players who transition into things like poker or any other field. If they were passionate about video games, their success story, they usually always encapsulate it with, I just gamified it. I treated it like World of Warcraft or like Valorant or like whatever.
Oh
And
yeah.
I just tried my best to get better at it in the same way that I did there. And with content creation and with YouTube and or anything in comparison to games or specifically competing in FPS titles, the there's multiple metrics of success, right? There's personal success where it's like, okay, I'm winning these engagements, which is leading me to have better stats, and then better stats can put me onto a better team,
Hmm.
and or overall you could just look at the win. Did we win or did we lose? And there's multiple things to base your version of success off of. But to what you're saying for something like content creation, it's really only one thing telling you if you're winning
Yeah,
or
if you're
not.
on the right track or not.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's easy, especially in a world where you're looking for engagements and you're looking for clicks and likes or whatever, to see is 10K views good in comparison to what I'm doing. If you were averaging 500 views, 10K views is crazy, but
Right.
now you're averaging more. So where's the threshold of winning and losing kind of drawn? It's a
Hmm.
lot harder to define in something that isn't competitive games now that you're out of it, and especially since you're like really just full steam ahead jumping into that field. I can definitely see how you're trying to gauge where that metric of success lies.
Sure.
Speaking of your content creation, can you walk me through your creative process? How do you feel out the subject for your next video?
That's a good question. My creative process is really at first it's like really intuition based. Like I'd be like, I watch a lot of Valorant, probably more than like 99. I can only think of like four people that watch more Valorant than I do. Um, but yeah, like I just watch a lot of Valorant, and whatever I think is interesting, that's like, oh, this is cool. So I write it down, and it's like, okay, I'll keep watching and be like, okay, this is also cool. This is also cool. And once I have like a couple, like a couple things I think would be cool, from there it's like, okay, I start with like, well, what could this video be about? And then from there it's just like refine, 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 refine until like I've like narrowed down on exactly what the video is going to be and what the script is going to be like and stuff like that.
Fantastic. Yeah, I can only think of all the times that we're playing World of Warcraft together, and then you're like, all right, I got to go grind out this video. I'm like, what is he even working on? Like, how
Yeah.
does he even have this many ideas? I'm sitting here scrambling for ideas of questions to ask, topics to come up with, and then I see 3 new StrongLegs videos posted. I'm like, dude, how did you even think of any of this stuff, man? Like, I love your creativity and how it's shown in all your videos too, and they're just so easy to watch.
Thank you, man.
So the conclusion of the Tier 2 VCT America's ascension not only saw M80 fall to Brazilian team 2 game in the finals to advance to the Partnership League, but also saw them and other organizations like Oxygen pull out of Tier 2 Valorant for now. Do you see a healthy space in the future for these developmental leagues, or do you think another reform is needed?
That's a really good question. Um, I'm actually really happy for the Brazilian guys. Obviously, my heart is broken for M80. I think 2Gs actually deserves to be in the partnership league. They played insane, and their story is actually unreal. Um, but them winning was actually terrible for North American Valorant specifically because whichever region from like the Americas, like North America, LATAM, or like Brazil qualifies, essentially more jobs are created for that region. So while it's amazing for Brazil, it is really bad for North American players because now there's just 5 or 7 less spots because like these Brazilian teams, they might go international at some point, but for like at least the short term, they're gonna stick to like Portuguese or like Spanish speaking players, right? So like that's 7 less jobs for North American players and teams, and like over time, people that have dumped a lot of resources like Oxygen and Dark Zero and M80, obviously being the biggest culprit here, like at some point you can't keep justifying the investment once you haven't qualified. And I think the owner, like Marco, is like he took a huge gamble. Like a lot was riding on M80's success in those 2 years, and I think he was paying his players really well. I think better than some of the tier 1 teams, if I remember correctly. So he took a massive gamble, and like I think him departing just speaks volumes on that, and like the lack of sustainability available because Riot is not offering any sort of incentive for these teams. They're not offering like any sort of financial support. Like yeah, there's prizes and whatnot, but like a lot of the details for the tier 2 league, like challengers specifically, just doesn't really seem as fleshed out as it could be when it comes to like creating a sort of healthy ecosystem. And obviously I don't think like there should be every team assigned in tier 2 either. I think that's a little crazy as well because there really is not a tangible return for orgs anyway. Like what are these teams really paying for, bro? Like they're literally just paying for a gamble to get into partnership, and then from there all their problems are solved, right? Like, hey, that's literally just it's like a moonshot, bro. So like yeah, I'm not expecting like 12 signed teams and challengers or like whatever amount of teams are in challengers, but like there needs to be like some sort of like okay, these players are making $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 a month guaranteed to like actually pursue a potential career in Valorant because like this is going to sound terrible, and I don't know if this is off topic, stop me, but the lack of tier 2 is going to hurt Valorant's development in the long term, like really badly. Like I think the amount of players that have dropped out that have had so much potential in the last like year, and I think a lot more of these people are going to be dropping out the more and more they don't qualify into tier 1 or the more they don't get tier 1 opportunities is terrible for Valorant's future. Like, and terrible for maybe not Valorant, but like North America specifically, where we're going to have just bad teams, like underdeveloped players, and like I mean, look at T1 in Korea, bro. Like they're having such a hard time with talent. They literally started an entire program. Like they picked up, Roy Exa Kim. He's a like 15-year-old Korean kid from North America, and they picked up like all these like 15, 16-year-old Korean kids, and they're gonna develop them for 2 years because they're just tired of like the lack of like player development that's happening in the region and like the inconsistencies with like the talent pool in Korea specifically, right? And it's like they took it in their own hands to like create an entire academy program for these like kids that will be playing for 2 years before they're even viable to play in VCT, right? Like that one is not financially. Teams in North America can't just do that, bro. Like some teams are already struggling to be positive even with the Riot incentive, right? Like how can you pick up 7 more or 8 more people on staff? Like it's just so undoable, and it's like that just hurts the region so much. And like we might not feel the effects now because a lot of these players are in their peak, but dude, in 2 years from now, when like these players are getting washed and like we want new talent to be brought in, like we're gonna have a really hard time finding like good talent. And I think we're already kind of seeing that, but it's gonna get even worse over time, I think.
Yeah, I think the implementation of the partnership, even upon its debut, already saw so many players and teams disperse and leave the scene in general.
Mm-hmm.
myself included, my whole team included, really. And the my initial thought was that the implementation of challengers would see some sort of challengers representation as well. I think that
Mm-hmm.
if there was something to supplement the for one the schedule, and two the development, it would be some sort of big tournament that challengers and partnered teams would play in. Top four challengers teams get to play in this international tournament, and the international or whatever it is more of like an MSI or like a
Mm-hmm.
Worlds, or like how Call of Duty used to run, where it's pool play. Like all the open pool teams, four, five, six of them go up and they play the pro teams, the qualified teams, the teams that were already predisposed at that event. And I think that some sort of challengers representation or tier two representation globally would give even more incentive for
Mm-hmm.
teams to stick around, players to stick around, more importantly, because there's no real farm system. There's been some talks of a requirement for academy teams or an implementation of academy teams. I still
Yep.
don't know if that would directly supplement this issue that we're talking about, or if it would even assist at all, because what happens if this academy team comes up and then they have no organization to represent them? I think that there's a couple different ways that they could go about fixing this long-term issue that you're talking about. Right now it's not really an issue in terms of development. We have great contenders internationally. It's still pretty much a different region winning every single major event. So I think in terms of the current state, it's as it always has been.
Mm-hmm.
But we've been seeing this slow trickle of players fade away,
Mm-hmm.
basically month by month as this progresses, especially since the partnership has came out. Speaking of the partnership, and I think you bring up some great points about talent. What the skill level is looking like right now, what the available pool of
Mm-hmm.
players is looking like right now. The previous open competitive landscape in North America specifically allowed players to participate in tournaments organized by NSG and Knights every single week, as well as a couple other ones like VCS,
Mm-hmm.
as well as larger Riot events frequently. Now, players funnel themselves through Premier and Challengers for an almost 1 in a million shot to get into the International VCT League. Was Valorant harder before the Partnership League, or are we looking at the most competitive scene we've seen so far?
Are we talking about harder in terms of like winning against other teams,
Yeah, I'd
or
say
like
how competitive it was.
okay,
There's
like the level of competition?
yeah, the level of competition. Yeah.
No, I think genuinely I do. Okay, it's a little hard to make this argument because obviously now like our perspective on the game and like our understanding of the maps and agents has like evolved insanely,
Tremendously.
right?
Yeah.
Like yeah, it's just like everyone just knows the game now, right? Like
Mhm.
there's no more secrets on how to play the game. Um, but I think back then the difference is there were just so many high level players and high level teams. Like yeah, like Sen, TSM, some of these teams had the heads up because they like bought, the most experienced and like freshest players in the market immediately on the game's release, and that helped them a lot, like especially Sen. You know what I mean? Like looking back, I actually reviewed Sen's VODs like not too long ago from like the Shazam era. And like, dude, they were playing terrible Valorant, bro. It was just so bad to watch. And just like obviously it's they're not bad players, but it's just like their level of like understanding of the game and the meta back then was just so terrible. But like there were so many competitive teams. Like there were so many teams getting upset. There's like, even in the I think probably the peak of competition was the VCT qualifier when Partnership League was becoming a thing. Where like T1, Gen G and all these teams were playing in these tournaments, like D1 and like all these teams, right? Like that actually was the peak of competition in my opinion. Like that truly was the point in time where like there was like 14, 16 very competitive teams. Like yeah, there was a couple teams that were just a little bit better, but like overall like the level of competition was marginal at that point. Like there was upsets happening left and right. Like it was insane.
Yeah, every top team or every signed team, every team in general was just trying to prove themselves to, get a spot in the league. Like, we can win your events. We're a great org. And they're building their resume at that time. And that was a really competitive time. The top 20 teams or so felt like they were all signed. Everyone was salaried.
Yep.
And from 5 until 19 or 20, that every month that list was on VLR, was the rankings were shuffled every month. And yeah, it was definitely a crazy time. Would you say it was harder to find a win during that time?
Oh yeah, dude, it was so hard to find wins. Like literally every match that I played, dude, was like I felt like I was going to war, bro.
Yeah.
It was insane. Like it was so much, and like not only that, but there was so much resources being dumped that like I felt like every team that I played then had like a full staff. Like they had their 5 players, their manager that was taking care of that stuff, so all the players could focus, a coach, an assistant coach, or an analyst. Like almost every team was fully staffed. Like remember what Knights was before they dropped their roster like not too long ago, where like they had Ocean as their IGL and they had like an analyst and they had like a manager and they had like 5 players, and like those guys were doing pretty well in challengers at the time. And it's like every team was like that. That was every team. BBG, like literally Gen G, all these teams were like that. They were full staff teams, dude. And like now, bro, the worst part about Valorant right now is the scrim quality. Because during the off season, who the hell are you playing? Tier 1 teams, the only teams that are scrimming are the Tier 1 teams who are doing trials. Tier 2 is like pretty much dead. Like, dude, Tier 2 is in shambles. And like it's either you're scrimming these Tier 1 teams that are on trial, that are trialing players, so the scrim quality is already by extension of that fact alone is already bad practice, right? Because like they don't have strategy. They're just going in there. They have like maybe a couple defaults and they're just trialing players. That's what they're doing. They're not trying to get better, bro. You know what I mean? So like the level of quality in scrims in North America is actually in shambles, bro. Like Mel tells me all the time, she tries to find scrims. They can't find any scrims. Cloud9 left the region, bro. They're not even in North America right now. They literally went to Korea to boot camp for 3 weeks just so they have teams to practice against. Think about that. Like, actually think about that. Is that not insane? They're in Korea to scrim, bro. They don't even have a tournament there. That is crazy.
They just want to play. They just need somebody to play.
There's just no scrims. The scrim quality in North America is terrible. It's actually terrible. You're playing against kids who are like 15, 16 Zoomers, or you're playing against broken teams if you can even find it, dude. Like, but there's periods of time where like you don't find scrims. Tier 2 teams aren't playing. Tier 1 teams aren't playing. Like, there's just dead periods. Like, that's really, really bad.
Yeah,
that was never the case back then.
Oh, never. And to your point, there were multiple times on Complexity where we would have scrims just all day from Monday to Friday, booked only against Tier 1 teams. And then we get into an NSG or a qualifier or a Knights, and then we play against the team that we like a Tier 2 team we haven't practiced against. And to your point earlier, we get upset. We lose our BO1, we get knocked down into lower bracket, and then we have to claw our way back up. There were a lot of times where we found it even more beneficial to us in the long term and learning as a team to make us better overall, even against Tier 1 teams, the best of the best. And we would have to play Tier 2 teams. We learned so much playing Tier 2 teams. We learned so much playing guys that we hadn't heard of that we would discount. We would just completely discard them in our minds. And then we go and play them in a tournament. And it's like, wow, that game was a lot closer than it should have been. It's like, yeah, we weren't prepared for that. And it's not necessarily the fact that we're aiming too high, but we just weren't putting ourselves against everything that our region had to offer and everything that we would face. There were a lot of times where the top teams, Sentinels, Cloud9, TSM, they'd take all these scrims too, because no matter what, you'd have to fight these teams in the first round. So you better be ready. So
100%.
And we struggled with that a little bit on Complexity, where we talk about it, like, what should we be doing? Should we be playing against these bad teams? Well, this really good team is looking for a block right now, and they're asking to play against us. It'd be wrong if we didn't take it, but also the second that we get into this tournament, what's his name?
Against Teal Scene, bro. Dude, Do you remember the teal team roster?
Oh,
If
I
I
do.
tell you the players on that now, and you're like, it's like, holy shit, that was actually a demon roster. But
Yeah,
they were so unknown back then that like
yeah. When they
insane,
when
bro.
they started playing really well, we played them I think in two or three like grand finals or semifinals, like all back to back. And so it was just like us versus Teal Seam and Sonics and Immortals in a lot of in like these NSG and Knights and whatever tournaments
Yeah,
that there were, like
and us,
5Ks and
Renegades.
10Ks. Yeah. And like it was a crazy time. Like these names coming up, you play against the Teal Seam, you get shit on, you're like, what just happened? Like what even just
Hmm.
happened? I'm sitting here scrimming against Tens and Shazam all day, and then I go in and then I play Teal Seam. And obviously now all of those players are incredibly good.
Oh,
Like
they're all signed.
they're yeah,
Almost
exactly.
all of them.
Yeah.
Net
Like
signed, Seven signed. Like, bro, those kids are
yep.
cracked. They
Yeah.
still are
And
super
honestly,
cracked.
every iteration of that roster, like Harmful, Jonah Six, like
Hmm.
every player that team had seen under the Teal Seam banner was just, dude, just nutty,
Yep,
absolutely disgusting.
for
And
sure.
there we made the mistake multiple times. We let the ego get to our head of being on a tier one team, and we discounted them, and we just tossed it to the dirt, and it bit us in the ass so many times, so many
Mm.
times. And that was one mistake. Like you make that mistake one time, two times, three times, you're like, oh my god, that's never happening again. Get me scrims against these guys if this is what I'm gonna play against all day.
Yeah, dude.
Like I'll be ready for T1 Valorant when I get there at that point. It's no doubt a team like 2Game has benefited tremendously from these format changes. A lot have argued that merging the Americas in the partnership program partly saved the comp scene in LATAM regions. Do you think that could have been done without this league's creation?
It's a really good question. I think it actually would have been really hard. I think the merging of the Americas was not a bad thing, like net. It was a net positive in almost every way, right? I think the only downside is that there's only so many spots to fill now. So, like the way I see it, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm completely misinformed here, and maybe I should talk to more people about this specific thing. But like the way I see it is the less positions there are, the less orgs are going to invest, right? Like, is okay. Maybe your game plan is not to get players into tier one. Maybe it's just to sell players. Maybe it's just to be a farm team. Like that's still a viable business strategy to be a farm team for tier one teams, right? But like now it's just like okay, there's only like what 100 Thieves, Sen, C9, EG, G2. Am I missing one? Five, six, I think
I
maybe
don't think so.
six. Yeah, like five or six, whatever the number is, five, six teams that are North American. Like that's just how many player spots is that? 25? Like 25 player positions
Hmm.
that get paid. And then from there, it's like what one or two teams in tier two are getting paid. Now that Dark Zero's out, Oxygen's out, and M80's out, maybe none of them are going to be signed, right? Like now there's only like 25. I'll go 30. There's 30 player positions in the entire region, bro. And like half those positions are pretty much held by like upcoming talent. And like, dude, Aspas, 21 years old. That guy's gonna have a career so damn long. Valen, that kid's not going anywhere because young IGLs have an insane career trajectory. You know what I mean? Like, so many of these positions are being held by like people that are gonna have very long careers. It
Yeah.
just doesn't leave a lot of mobility for the rest of the players. Like, there's only like two or three upcoming players that get signed from tier two now. You know what I mean? Like Oxy was one of the last ones. Icy was one for G2, but I think they're on to Jaw now. But like it's just like there's just not a lot of positions. So I think the merging is great for the regions, but it's really bad for like player availability because now it's like there's only so many spots. I mean, even for Brazil, bro, like they have like what three Brazilian teams: Furia, MIBR, and now 2G,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I think a case can be made to say that in an effort to save the scene, um, globally on our side of the world, we may have shot ourselves in the other foot, not looking the other way when we were crossing the street. Um, just the thought of there being in North America alone, um, what 100 signed players at one time.
Oh, more, I think.
Yeah, more, and that's not even counting the game changer scene. Um, it, the the way that it's shrunk down. I want to see as many of my former teammates and former competitors and colleagues and peers get a position, get a paid position in the league, no matter what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
My stance, I feel, will always be to open it up, but I can completely understand the concept and the thinking behind the partnership and
Mm-hmm.
why it's a good thing. Uniting the leagues or uniting the regions and
Yep, I think it's great.
making it inherently international.
Yep.
I think it's great. It makes for awesome competition. I know that the last two stages of VCT in Americas were just a little funky from an outside perspective looking at the formatting. But every team got to play each other. I got to see all my favorite teams play all my other favorite teams. It was a great time. And I just think that outside of the amount of games being played, even though I would want to see more games being played, I just want to see more players playing too. And it's a little disheartening to see, challengers just fading away in the way that it is. Like you said, there's so many high-end players with stake in the game right now. Valen is a great example. He's not going anywhere. The equity that he has on a team, that he brings to a team where he can, basically just have one of the strongest voices in the game, which he does. That's irreplaceable,
Yeah, 100%.
and that's the case. You can make the same case for pretty much every single player in the league right now, every single one.
Oh,
And
I can name you like 20 people.
exactly 20 out of the 30 though. So
Yeah.
the recycling of those players is more than likely going to be a thing. I mean, there's some getting shipped out to other regions. I'm really happy to see players like Governor and Ban go to other regions and find a lot of success there, like on a team like Talon.
Nere too. Nere is a great example of that.
Great example. And I wouldn't be surprised if that keeps happening. Oh, our history in America so far has been that we've produced great talent. We have that great talent. We've shipped some of it off. We keep a lot of it local. But to your point, it's a little scary thinking we don't have these same programs and same funnels to create that same talent anymore, especially when it's so discouraging to try to play right now. I don't know.
100%.
I don't know the way the ecosystem looks exactly around Premiere since I've left. Right before I had stopped almost playing entirely, the Premiere was just then getting funneled into challengers, instead of it being just Premiere for funsies. But I can't imagine that it's a fun route to go through right now. I can't imagine that it's got so many incentives to it other than playing in the for a chance to play in the qualifier tournament where two teams get the chance to then play in another qualifier tournament, maybe, where then they also get the chance to be one team to go into the partnership league, and pray to God your org is safe and sound and healthy enough to where you get that spot. And it just seems like a good idea in theory as far as keeping the game itself and the competitive scene alive, but keeping the players enticed, keeping the players healthy, that to me is just so important. And seeing it die down, seeing myself and a lot of other players leave the game and look for something different, it is no surprise.
I mean, that's literally just it. It's I definitely see it from Rye's perspective though, because I actually have spoken to some of the people, and I definitely do see it from their POV. But it's just like this constant battle between like what is good for the publisher and like what is good for the players, right? Like there probably is some more of a middle ground that we could find that would be the best. In my opinion, a decent solution, like a middle ground, and this isn't a perfect world because I know it probably won't happen, but like there's the on season, and you know how like there's like usually the off season that starts around this time, like September all the way to like the beginning of next year. Like that period, if it was completely open, it would be insane. Like re-put these tier 1 teams back in a completely open tournament format for like a huge prize pool tournament. You know what I mean? Like these teams are willing to play in $100,000 Red Bull event, right? Like they're willing to play in that. They're willing to travel for a couple hundred thousand. Like I say a couple 100,000, like it's nothing. It's a lot of money, but like compared to VCT that's in the millions, right? It's kind of different. But like if the off season was completely open, where like we could somehow get these tier 1 teams to play, right? That would be the most ideal. But it realistically it won't happen because the players want the break. Like and the orgs want a time to like restructure their teams and the roster mania and all that, right? Like it's just never gonna happen. And I'm not really seeing like what the solution is between what Riot thinks is best for them and like what players, like what we know is best for the players, right? Because like, dude, Challengers is dying for sure. But look at GC. GC is dead. Like GC is so dead that the matches don't even show up on VLR anymore. It's that bad. Like that is insane. Because at one point there was like almost 12 signed GC teams, if I remember correctly.
The
and it was
GC hype at one point in time was crazy,
insane.
It was during its height, its peak. My only thought was, this is going to take off. This is going to go even crazier than it is right now.
Right, and it was like it was like world shattering, right? Because there was no other like completely GC related industries that were as popular as like what we were seeing in Valorant, and it was insane. And like now I'm seeing it secondhand from Mel, and like I do understand Riot's POV of like wanting GC to be this sort of like bridge between women and marginalized genders and men, and like the eventual path of like merging them all together. But like I just don't think we're there yet, and just to see them constantly pull out resources and pull out like attention from that industry is just like it's really bad. It feels really bad to witness, to be honest.
And it felt like we were on such a good course and a solid trajectory to get there. It felt like the merge was right there. There were ideas and you could theorize it, but you could visualize it. You could see that there was some sort of integration between both scenes and on the way. And now looking at it, it feels like it climbed all the way up and then it just started going all the way back down.
It's like a roller coaster that just didn't make it over the top.
Exactly. It never made it to the top, and it was right there the whole time. And I think that's one of the larger shames for the Valorant scene right now too. Although I will say, it's not all doom. It isn't all doom. The scene, as far as watching the game, the health of the players, these players are taken care of at the end of the day.
For sure.
It's an amazing game to watch. I watch every tournament. The events are beautifully ran. It's obvious that Riot 100% cares.
They 100% care.
Yeah, it's just how do you best serve everyone? There's always going to be a group of people, whether or not, you're like me and you were fighting for a spot in Challengers and you didn't make it and you were a little jaded for a little bit of time and now you don't play anymore. They try to make a spot for everyone, but if you don't get it, then it just was never meant to be. I find myself in that boat. I do think that in order to have a Band-Aid fix, I love your idea of the open format towards the end of the year, or in the off season. Any event that brings in as many teams as possible, to me, is a net positive. You said it best. You have teams willing to play in these Red Bull events, these tier 1 or these partnered teams willing to play in these Red Bull events, the Ludwig events. There is a desire. Are they playing with their full roster? Do a lot of players want to break? Absolutely. Although there's only 12 games played per year by some teams, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
The practice schedule, what a lot of people don't see is that practice schedule never ends. That cycle never ends. They're still playing 8-10 plus hours per day. Majority of it is scrims, and then it's ranked at night, and it's streams, and it's content shoots, and it's whatever. And it's all to prepare for these officials, and you only see 12 of them, and it's a shame. Absolutely, it is a full send shame. But as far as the desire for the break, I would want to break after that too.
It's tough, man.
It's tough. You're asking me to play in this Ludwig event right now. It sounds like fun, but dude, I need a vacation.
Yeah, I mean,
real bad.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, there definitely are a lot of like things playing into I definitely see it from Riot's POV. I definitely understand that it's not an easy solution, unless you were to like revamp everything. But like, okay, think about it now. Let's look at it from like the investor's perspective, right? Like investors want to make sure that they're tied to a brand that is like dependable and reliable. Like they don't want a team. I'm choosing this as a really stupid example, but like they don't want like a team of full of neo-Nazis to like qualify into VCT. You know what I mean?
Right.
And like now it's like, oh, okay, yeah, Red Bull now has people that are like clearly Nazis in the league. You know, not that that would happen. It's a really silly example, but like,
right.
you know what I'm trying to say though, right?
Like it would be terrible.
Like, you want to make sure that there's like some sort of system where like these players are vetted and they're tied to like a higher standard where like the investor interest is secure. You know what I mean? Because they also want to preserve their brands. They don't want to be associated with like bigotry and racism and sexism, and they like, and that's understandable as well. Because now we're talking about people, losing people money. Like no one wants to do that either, right? So it's like where really is the middle ground? It's really hard to say. I can definitely understand that it's not a simple solution, and there's a lot of things and a lot of like people to consider. I just wish that Riot would just take a bit of an L on their profits just so they can have a much healthier industry. And like, I think that alone would honestly solve it. But I definitely understand the need to also have their profits go up as well. So it's just tough, man. It's just a hard situation, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And from a business perspective, a player perspective, a team perspective, organizationally, it's hard to find the right answer and to implement one at such a large scale because you have to think about all the people that you're affecting. And, we know that Riot isn't unfamiliar with making these hard decisions. We just saw, Bleed get taken out of VCT. And I'm sure that wasn't a fun decision to make. A lot of people congratulated the next team that had been promoted in their stead. Boom, I think was the name. My thought immediately goes to, well, if these players secured their spot previously through Ascension or in the league, how are we not looking for another home for them as well? Logistically, whether or not it's in the fine print or the contracts that they signed or whatever it might be, I think my heart immediately goes out to the players that were one day they're getting on for practice. They wake up the next morning, their whole team's blown up.
Yeah.
Without any of their own, they got shafted twice. I had seen reports that they were late on payments. They weren't paying players on time. They weren't paying players at all. And right. And then they wake up, they're like, oh man, at least I could play. At least I'm playing at this level and I'm doing what I love and I'm playing on stage, and then they get that taken away from them too. None of it being their choice. And all of it being on the shoulders of someone who doesn't know how to run a business. And I can only think that if I'm Riot, how do I keep these players in the league? I feel like if I'm Mr. Riot himself, these players got wronged. John Riot. Yeah, right. If I'm John Riot, these players got wronged. I want to make this right. I need to make this right.
And I think they did. I think they are as well. Yeah. Like they're definitely they're guaranteeing the players like security and well-being.
And I hope so, as they should. But Riot is not unfamiliar with these hard decisions. And I think that if there's a way to figure out how to continue to grow and develop these ecosystems in Tier 2 and Tier 3 and Premier and Challengers and GC and whatever it is, and keep them as involved as they can be, for Riot to be as involved as they can be. Even if they handed it off to Knights or to NSG like back in the day and just said, hey, this is Tier 2 now, and we're going to come up with some circuit system like to bring it up. It might not be the best fix, but at least, it gets as many people playing as possible and it keeps some sort of job security. I think that's one of the best things too. You probably felt it when you were playing. Job security did not exist. I woke up every single day with the anxiety of, man, if I don't do well in this scrim, oh God, I could kiss this whole dream goodbye now. Like, and that wasn't necessarily a fun period of time. And the game was fun. Playing was fun. I
Mm.
didn't take it for granted for a single day, purely because of that. But it's really good to see that, there there are these teams and these players that are locked into these longer contracts, that are locked into the partnership league. It gives a lot more security for players that I felt like I never had outside of pure performance. Obviously, that still exists,
Yeah,
but
no, that definitely does.
obviously it does.
Mm.
But the sense of being a part of something that's a little more designed to take care of you definitely seems to be there. And Riot might not ever have the perfect answers. You and I could sit here and talk all day about what the perfect answer might be, and we'll never
Yeah,
reach it. There's
for sure.
probably 100 people in a boardroom doing exactly what we're doing right now, and
Oh
they'll
yeah,
never reach that. So long as there's some sort of solution found for a dying tier 2 scene, then I think
and
that's
GC.
that's all we can hope for, and GC as well. Mechanical skill is comprised of a combination of movement and aim. Good game knowledge consists of situational awareness, positioning, scenario analysis, understanding timings, utility usage, and an almost endless checklist of macro-level comprehension of the game. These skills operate in tandem with each other to create a great player, along with some psychological factors, such as the ability to approach conflict resolution constructively, how feedback is delivered to teammates, and what type of emotional responses a player has to wins and losses. Given all of these traits, skills, and factors, do you think anyone has the ability to go pro? Is it genetic? And do you think some people have predisposed advantages as competitive players?
Jesus Christ, dude, you just wrote a novel for a question.
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into being a good player, man.
Guy just said he's like the meme was like crosshair placement position. Um, okay. I do think some people are slightly genetically superior in that regard. I don't think it's mechanical. I think if it is, I don't think it's as clear as like, oh, this guy's clearly better. This guy has superior hand-eye coordination. I don't think it's like that. But I think there are some people that I've like seen, talked to, witnessed their careers on the come up, who seem to have like certain personality traits that make them oblivious to pressure. Like they just don't process pressure and stress the same way other people do. And obviously that as well, but like stress and like the pressure and like your psychological response to these things plays such an important role in like your performance and like how well you play and how consistently you play. That, like I think they have an advantage in that regard. I just genuinely think some people are just better with stress and better with pressure, and that is like a buff. Now, when it comes to like mechanics, I think mechanics are just, dude. I mean, I'll give you a very like example that I know pretty well because she's part of my social circle as well. But like Fluorescent, Mel's teammate, girl was iron. She was a literal iron player, bro. Like not a fake. She was dead ass iron, bro. And it's like, okay, how is this person now like one of the most mechanically skilled players, right? Like, how, dude? Have you seen? I can recognize a floor clip. If you were to show me 10 pros like Demon One, Aspas, like all these players, some of the best aimers in the world, and hit their names, I'd be able to tell you exactly which one is Fluorescence. Like I just know her aim style so well, and it's just so flashy and so precise, and her movement is just so insane. Um, and I actually asked her like 2 days ago. I was in the Discord call with her and Mel. We were just chatting. Um, and I was like, Floor, what do you do? Like, do you aim train? Like, what's your routine? And she's like, no, I don't really aim train that much. But she at one point was doing like 5 hours of DMs a day. Like literally 5 hours of DMs a day. Could you imagine that? Like every day, 5 to 6 hours? Like that is insane amounts of DMing. Like that's just shadow grinding levels of DMing. And it's like, it is it genetic? Like, is it genetic that she put 5 to 6 hours a day for like months at a time, dude? Like I think if you have the right process and you're following it and you believe in yourself and like you're adapting and you're evolving and you're growing and like you're taking input and you're like constantly in the like flow of improving, I genuinely think that anyone could go pro. Like at least maybe not go pro like in terms of career, but anyone could be good enough to be in a pro match.
Right.
Right? I'll say that because that one's a little bit more tangible. Cute cat, by the way. Little kitty in the background.
Oh, you can see him.
Yeah.
Oh, they can
So I see his little black head. He's got a little face mask on.
That's Keith.
I love that. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
I
Keith.
love him.
Oh,
Yeah,
love that.
I think that you alluded to a great point. Being mechanically skilled might not be genetic purely, but the ability to sit there and DM for 5 hours a day, that
Yes.
might be inherently genetic. You know, to
Yeah, or cultural, like
or cultural.
something that is
Yeah.
intangible to us.
Yeah, exactly. Some ethereal essence, some conscious state of being that just lets you sit through 5 hours of death matching. And I think that the for me, it never felt like I was unable to get better, to go pro, to accomplish my dreams. But I definitely felt, damn, I'm bad. Like, I am bad right now. There was a point I would play Counter-Strike. I was Silver Elite Master. You know, I was Iron. And then I just grinded. And I don't know if it's necessarily something that was inherent to me, that I just really wanted to do it. I just really wanted to get better. And I was, you know, predisposed to some sort of drive that I had to get better. That might be something beyond us, beyond either even genetics or skill or whatever it might be. But the mechanical skill, I will argue all day that there isn't a complete unattainable level of mechanical skill. Anyone through a certain amount of degree of work, I believe, can get to a X level of aim, fluorescent level aim. I don't know. She's actually cracked. Like,
She's so cracked.
She's so good.
She just dropped a montage. You should
Yeah,
watch it.
I was
It's
just about to bring that
insane.
up. I watched that like yesterday or the day before, and I was like, dude, I'm saying all this right
Yeah.
now. I'm saying all this right now. I don't even think I could ever do that. You know?
That's crazy.
But then I go back and look at some clips that I've had, and I'm sure you do the same. You watch an old clip, and you're like, damn, I really hit that. You know?
Yeah.
And so I think mechanics and all that is 100% something attainable. The ability to not fold under pressure, to not let stressors get to you or anxiety get to you, or even have anxiety be a factor, that might be something that is completely uncontrollable.
Yeah.
I can't say the same for myself. I had to have a lot of talks with our team sports psychologists on Basilisk and Complexity about all the times where I was like, dude, I have imposter syndrome. I'm sitting in this game with Counter-Strike players that I've watched for 10 years. I'm playing against Skadoodle right now. I don't know what to do. I'm playing against Skadoodle. Like, what do I do? How do I even digest what's going on right now? The imposter syndrome definitely hit pretty hard, but I've had so many teammates that didn't even phase them. You know, they were excited. They were itching. They were the complete inverse of how I was feeling. And all I wanted, you know, I ended up gaining that confidence through work with our coaches, through work with myself, looking inward a little bit, having a bit more positive self-talk in those moments. But some of my teammates just got into the server, and it was like they were waiting for that moment for all these years of grinding, and their mentality was just a little bit different than mine. We might have performed the same. They might have performed better. I might have performed better one day.
Yeah,
but the inherent ability to battle that weird, dark, depressive part of your brain when you're getting into these games, and even when you're in conflict with your teammates. You know, how do you approach conflict resolution? Do you let your teammate yelling at you get to you, or do you recognize that as a burst of emotion because he's passionate about this thing? And it doesn't make you less passionate that you're not thinking like that, but how do you navigate those situations? Some people just have a higher given emotional intelligence, you know,
Right.
And some people understand emotions better than other people. And when you get into the mix of having, you know, so many teammates and you're going through the ringer, you're trying a bunch of people out, you're going to talk to a lot of these people who approach the game in a very different way mentally. And there's always that conversation of, you know, is being good at this game purely in my genetics, or is it through constant skill and hard work? Some people grind and grind and grind, and their work ethic might be perfect or great for them or amazing, but they just never make it. And some people
maybe just, played one day and then they played against Shroud and then they got a tryout somewhere and then they got signed. I attribute pro or at least signing a contract and being formally called a pro a little less to genetics and skills and whatever, or emotions or how you approach getting better, and more so to luck, like right place, right time. And it's not all luck. It's not nearly all luck.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, keeping your spot is a huge thing. Being good enough to be there is gigantic. And obviously, I'm not trying to discredit any of the work, but you won't know it's your time to shine until it's like right in front of you. It's not something that you can necessarily craft or just manifest right there in the moment. For a lot of players, It is luck. And for a lot of those same players, they took that lucky moment and they ran with it and they worked their fucking ass off. Monsoon, who plays Apex for Complexity, he worked his ass off. He was a Battle Royale player for a bunch of different orgs, Wild Card, World's Best Gaming. He was incredible, really good. And he, a signed pro player at the time, still got a lucky moment, hit a clip against Shroud on his stream, and popped off. And he took that recognition and utilized it even further. He abused it and said, "Oh my God, this is my second, third, whatever break," and just ran with it. And I think the ability, more than anything, to recognize when you have the opportunity to improve improving is one thing, but recognizing when you're in that situation is so crucial. I feel
like capitalizing on opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be able to capitalize and know what you're capitalizing on and have that vision and drive to do it in the first place. In the case of Monsoon, he saw that he got raided, or he saw that a bunch of people came in because he showed up on Shroud's kill feed from a sick shot and got a sweet clip that is still legendary in Apex today, and ran with it, capitalized off of it. And just recognizing when you're in that moment. I wish that I could. Playing Battalion 1944 when that game came out, I played a dozen games against Skadoodle and Shroud years before I'd even ever seen my first pro contract. I wish I capitalized. I wish I clipped every kill I got against them and put it all on YouTube and clipped all their reactions like I killed your favorite streamer or whatever. There's a million different moments that I can go back on in my career and wish I had capitalized on inherently a lucky moment. I didn't know that I was going to get matched against them, but I also didn't recognize that there's a lot of work that I could have put in right there on that moment to boost me even further. And the same goes for even when I was a professional too. I could have been making content. I could have capitalized on that further. I see me getting signed as luck that AGM even messaged me one day randomly in the first place, and we made a team. It's not luck, the work that I put in when we did make the team, but what inspired him to message me?
That's the thing, I think. Like that literally is the thing, where it's like you will get many random, some are chance, some are luck, some are deserved opportunities, but like you have to also be constantly working your way towards that to even have those opportunities from the get-go. Like if you're in a ranked game and you farm Tarek, like that's not going to get you a pro contract, right? But if you're like a tier 2 player and like you're insane mechanically and you've been working at it for so long and you farm Tarek, that same thing happened in both situations, but now you're like, oh, you put out the content, and now it's like, oh, this kid's actually hella cracked, and like now you've set yourself up for these opportunities. So like, I think some luck is required, but I think it's a lot less specifically when it comes to pro than a lot of people might assume at first glance. Like yeah, it requires luck to get in, but like it doesn't require luck to have a good reputation with all your former teammates. Right. You know what I mean? Or like your managers and your coaches. Like it's not luck to have a good work ethic. It's not luck to have developed and worked on yourself when like the path wasn't clear. Like that, all these things are so hard, right?
Yeah.
And I think we have to make sure we place a lot of emphasis on that, because like you have to be good enough to get some of these coincidences to happen. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like for content, maybe it's a little bit different, but like for like pro specifically, like I think it's like so much work ethic and so much grinding going into that.
Yeah. And
you spend a lot of time as a competitor playing in like open tournaments or whatever it might be, grinding through these brackets.
Not these days.
Well, not these days. But, you know, back in the day, for the case of maybe like 2020 through 2022 Valorant, right? You spent a lot of time grinding through these open tournaments, or in this case now grinding through Premier or whatever it might be. And
Mr. Funhavers.
Yeah, and Mr. Funhaver tournament. And actually, there's a lot of credit to be given to Mr. Funhaver for running those tournaments, by the way. Like, what an insane...
Guy took it on himself.
Yeah, like, what an insane, like, tournament business model to be running right now. And it's giving a lot of you know, opportunity or reason for these players to play. But in the case of even Mr. Funhaver tournaments too, you know, like, you work your way through the bracket, and like you said, you craft these coincidences that happen. You might not have been like step by step saying, okay, I'm going to scrim every day with my team, no matter how good we are. We're going to play in this tournament. Week by week, we're going to get one bracket further. And then I'm going to play against Tarek in this ranked game and clip him and then do this. Like, you can't necessarily plan for that.
Yeah, you can't plan for a lot of these.
Right. But you can plan for, you know, your growth and improvement day after day, so that when that opportunity does land in your lap, no matter what it looks like, you capitalize on it entirely in its fullest and you try your best, you know. And there's probably a dozen, 2 dozen, a countless amount of unnoticed opportunities that I had in my entire career that I didn't even recognize as moments, you know. And I think that's the case for everyone. And so the ability to realize when something extraordinary can happen out of the work that you've done and the situation that you've found yourself in now, that is such a strong skill to have, you know. And in the case of, you know, bringing up someone like Trent again, everyone's beating themselves over the back of the head because they didn't pick up Trent.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh man, if we had picked him up, we'd be so lucky, you know. Like that frame of thinking is like, you couldn't have planned. He planned on it. He planned on being the absolute best, you know. But as far as someone overlooking him at the time, you can't predict something like that, you know. And you definitely would have been lucky if you had picked him up then, you know. So I think that opportunities in esports, if you're good, like you were saying, those players are gonna pick up on that. If you're getting good and you're shitting on someone in ranked, or you're working your way through these tournaments, people are going to start picking up on that. No one turns a complete blind eye to a lot of the things that are going on in the scene,
for sure.
especially back in the day. You know, as much as they might not have seemed like a lot, people recognized who won this week's NSG or this month's NSG or this month's Knights or whatever, and they use that, you know.
I mean, you know, Demon 1.
Exactly.
A lot of people say that Demon 1 came up out of nowhere, but like, you only think that if you've never been in the tier jungle. Like,
right.
He was playing in almost every tournament. I saw him almost every single event.
Yeah.
He was farming people.
Yeah.
Like, he did not come out of nowhere. Like, everyone knew this kid was cracked, bro.
Yeah.
Like,
when
genuinely,
Demon
I thought at
and
one
Clear
point he
were
was
playing,
cheating, bro.
It was nasty. I remember playing against Demon and Clear in a bunch of these tournaments and thinking, dude, these guys are just, they're next up.
Yeah, bro, they're insane.
And it's a perfect case in point. Like, if you play well, no matter what, this isn't luck. Demon 1 getting his trophy, in my mind, there's no luck about it, you know. It was all, he played enough until someone recognized that he was great, and that can be the case for every single player. You know, if it was luck, you know, it might have been Chet getting into a ranked game with him maybe one day, just because that's the way the matchmaking worked out, if that was a separate timeline somewhere, you know. But you're totally right. What is attributed to luck a lot of the time should really be placed in terms of just countless hours of grinding, and I don't think that that's recognized enough, to be completely honest, for sure.
Yep.
If you could craft the perfect player or teammate in your head, as far as a grinder, mechanical skill, overall macro, whatever it might be, like emotional intelligence, just pure game knowledge, what do you think that player would look like?
Oh my god. Okay, whoa. That's really hard to say. I have no idea what a perfect player would look like because I've never met one. So it's really hard to say. I think the one thing though that I can say is that there are some traits in teammates that I've always like not hated. Hated is a really strong word, but like there's always been a sign with every teammate that I've ever been with in terms of like a predictor of success, and it's a lot of them have been like the inability to relax in matches, like people who are like tilters and people who are like ragers. Like I feel like a lot of ragers and tilters, like very few of them succeed. Like I know some of them do because they're actually hella skilled, but then eventually there's like these falling outs with them. So like ideally some level of emotional intelligence. There's also like the people that don't play the game a lot. Like I feel like a lot of those players kind of fall off. I can think of a few players that haven't that I know don't play a lot of ranked. Um, but I think those guys are just been playing video games for so long at this point, and they're like playing it since they were 11. Um, but yeah, I think there's like some predictors, but I really don't know what a perfect player would be like, bro. Like I feel like if I tried to project my perfection on like another player, like they that combination of personality traits would just probably create a dysfunction somewhere in their gameplay. Like you can't have your duelist be too overthinking and like trying to be perfect. You can't have like your you can't have your IGL being stressing out, and you know what I mean. Like there's so many like things that like certain positions strive with eccentricities and certain personality types that like I think it's really hard to say what a perfect player is. So yeah, it's tough. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point of that emotional relationship that you have with your teammates too. My I hated teammates that would just tilt off the face of the planet,
Oh
even
yeah,
in
it's the
matches.
worst, bro.
It is the absolute worst. And teammates that shift blame. If there's anything that I could quantify as a perfect player, or any traits that I could attribute to a perfect player,
Mm-hmm.
it's almost purely emotional traits. Like I want you to take accountability for things that you think that you did wrong, and be able to have conversations with me about what we can do, or what you can do, or what I can do to have us get better as a team. And teammates that I don't have to walk on eggshells around. Not because I don't want to hurt your feelings, but because I don't want you to interpret what I'm saying as hurting your feelings and then you shut down. I feel like I've encountered, or I've had a lot of teammates like that, and also teammates that shift blame over and over again, or can't talk constructively about things that are going on.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on the type of person that, or depending on the person that was telling me something that I was doing wrong, I fell victim to that too. I would shut down. I'd receive criticism and be like, "Oh man, I've like," and maybe it was in a harsh way at that time, and I'd think, "Man, I really look up to you, and I'm sorry to disappoint," and I'd beat myself up for it too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that you're totally right. The perfect player, especially in a team game, can't. Maybe there's a couple things that you're looking for, but the way that people interact emotionally, and when results and money come into play, and you're just trying to win, I heard that as a justification a lot too. I'm just trying to win, or I just want to win. I just
Yes.
want to see us get better.
Like you and everyone else, bro.
Exactly. Like where do those where does that justification come from? And at what point are we teammates? Are we friends? Are we teammates and friends in this moment? Are like, do you not want to be my teammate or my friend anymore?
Yeah,
Like
right.
that was a lot of what I was
I think
was
it's a
thinking
leadership
about.
thing too. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah, the it depends on how, at least for me, being in that leadership position, it depends on how the trajectory of the team is going, and what expectations I've set for the team, right? Like, so on a week by week basis, if I point this out and we're looking to get this done, and we keep messing up on this one strat, or you keep messing up on your end of the map, or whatever we're talking about on this fundamental you just don't understand, obviously people are going to get frustrated. To a certain extent, people are going to get frustrated. How far does that go? At a certain point, we are getting paid to play a video game. At a
mhm.
certain point, we are just having fun playing video games with our friends. And I think that, the fire of competition can absolutely cloud a lot of things. But then
Yeah, for
the
sure.
the relaxed and lackadaisical
essence of video games can also corrupt a lot of things because there is a lot of money on the line. This
Yeah,
is
100%.
people's dreams. This is people's livelihood. This is everything that they've worked hard towards. So it's kind of balancing all of those expectations and how leadership balances those expectations between everyone. That, in my mind, determines the how emotionally malleable players are together on a team and what that relationship looks like and if it's healthy or not. There's a lot of toxic teams who all want different things. None of them can agree on anything as far as why they're here to play the game, and they're just on a team together because they all get a paycheck. And
100%. And it happens probably more so than we know.
Oh, absolutely. Especially now, probably. But, from the outside looking in, it's probably easy to say that people are just going to teams for money. But from being on the inside at one point in time, man, I went to Basilisk because my friends Royal Demise and Duck were there. They were getting paid, and I was like, I want to get paid to play games with my friends. That sounds awesome. And then we found that drive together. And so I've kind of been on both ends of the spectrum of like, I'm grinding my heart out. I grinded my heart out the entire way. But, I took one opportunity and this was crazy and I capitalized on it, and it was all about the grind. It was all about what am I doing every single day to get better. I'm taking all the, there's no excuses, no this, no that. And then I step into a leadership position with my friends and I'm thinking, all right, how do I get the best version of you guys every day? How do I get it? I went from being in a world where I'm so focused on myself to,
it's very different, bro.
To now I have to be a people person. I have to be not just an in-game leader and not just a KO player and not just a Sage player and not just the guy who talks to the coach the most or whatever, or the guy who calls the tack pauses, but I have to regulate the emotions of 4 people who are some of my closest friends. And you're so right. It depends on leadership as far as
much, bro.
What that perfect player looks like. You could, in theory, be the smartest player, be the most mechanically gifted player, but if you don't like being on that team and you don't line up with the vision of everyone there, or you don't have a collective vision with everyone there, that team's not really going to ever do anything. No one's going to succeed. Everyone feels a little bitter and jaded, and you don't get out of practice or out of a match feeling like either you gave it your all or, you're itching to get right back in, And the leadership piece is so undervalued, so underrated for sure in terms of managing those emotional relationships.
Yeah, I just think that success for leaders in esports specific, I mean, again, probably everything in life, but the success of leaders is very different than the success of like a duelist. I'll just use Valorant as an example, like a duelist player. Like you're a duelist player, like your only job is to get really good and integrate into the system, right? If you're like a really good Sentinel player, like your job is to get really good at your job and then integrate into the system. Like if you're a leader, like that is not your path of success. Like you can't only be strategy minded, bro. Like you could be the best strategist in the world and still not win, because you have to learn how to create like cohesion among completely different, ways of seeing the game and completely different ways of playing the game and like setting the tone and setting the vibes. And like, there's also so much pressure on like, you have to make sure that you are keeping yourself in check and you have to keep other people in check, and you can't slip up ever. Like leaders can't have a bad day, bro. You have a bad day, your entire team is trash. You know what I mean? Like duelists, like if you have an off day, like someone's picking up the slack. Like if you have a bad IGL day, the team is doomed. Like you can't rage. You can't slip. You have no off days on your emotions, bro. Like you need to be composed 99.9% of the time. And that is just so taxing. It's like, dude, this is going to sound really weird, but I remember like after like months of uplifting my teams, I would need like one day just to like release my negative energy just to balance out my soul, dude. Well, like, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I used my negativity as a weapon because it as bad as that sounds too, if I was mad about something, then it like really mattered. Because the thought was, oh my God, like Riley is actually very passionate about this right now. We should probably like focus
Listen.
up. You know, we should probably really, like, this is more than just the offline guys don't do that. This is a, what the hell are we doing? Everyone is messing up everywhere. Why would you even think like this? So I used that, you know, if you're the nice guy, the second you're not nice, that's when people listen. And so I approached in-game leading with a very, you know, just like you were saying at the start of the episode, freedom. You have the freedom to do whatever you want, recommend whatever you like, so long as you have that justification. But the second that the parameters of the rules and expectations that I've set as the leader for this team are broken more than once, twice, or 3 times, I'm going to freak out. I'm going to freak out because it's pretty simple rules. They're pretty simple standards.
Yeah, but you don't really have that luxury though, right? In like matches, like
right.
It's just like, dude, have you ever like been IGLing a match where like you're like, bro, like I'm literally calling perfectly, and we're just making the dumbest mistakes.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt that?
Yeah.
That for me, like that was like, oh man, I had such a hard time coping with that emotion because like the only satisfaction I had from IGLing was like calling lights out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that was the only satisfaction you have as a caller, right? Like there's no other satisfaction. Like things are working, strategies make sense, there's a flow, we're catching them, and like, you know what I mean? We're have a read on them.
Yeah.
And it's like it's like all that's working, and then I just watch my teammates lose the unlosable constantly. And it's just like, bro, just
losing the unlosable, yeah.
But you can't have an off day because if I freak out right now, the vibe is immediately dead.
It's
like
checked.
the vibes are deleted, bro. You know what I mean? Like everyone's checking out if I start raging. But it's like, you're like, dude, it's a lot, man. It's a lot, bro.
Yeah, the amount of times I went, no worries, guys. No worries.
No. Hey, good damage, guys. Good damage.
Good damage. Yeah, man. The amount of times I just said, good damage. All right, let's farm some more orbs. Nice. You guys we're so close. Like, we're so close to ults. It's good. Good damage. It could be 311. I'll say good damage, dude. That's so funny.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
I mean, for a specific example, we're playing against, like, my last match as a professional gamer. We were playing against Young Calc in the Challengers qualifier in the lower bracket. God. And our knockout match was on Pearl. And we had spent, you know, before we were in boot camp in San Antonio. And it was January of last year. And before that, in December, we had won the NSG Open qualifier to go to the LAN in California. And we were very excited. We were stoked. And so we won, beaten some great teams like YFP, and we took a break for 2 weeks. Took a 2-week vacation after we won this. Or it might have been a week and a half. Something like that. Either way, we came back to boot camp. When we had won, our best map was Pearl, and we were lights out. All my strategy was perfect. I had protocols for everything. Everyone was on the same fundamental page, knew all the protocols. It was beautiful. You know, XYZ happens, we're taking map control in fucking ABC. And we come back, we get to boot camp, we're all there in person, the vibes are high. We lose the first qualifier. Uh-oh, scrims were going bad. And we're like, okay, this is the last qualifier. It's our last chance. So we play the second qualifier in week 2. We're lower bracket. We're back here again, guys. God. This is the last chance. And we're on Pearl, last map, best map, dude. We had gone over this map for months, and we were so confident going into this whole thing on it. And lo and behold, I think we lost like 13-7 or 13-6 or something like that.
Ouch.
But on our CT side, the factors happened for the protocol to be put in place for us to execute on this protocol.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't do it. I paused the game. I'm like, guys, this is it right here. We went over all of this, and I'm looking at the minimap. Or not. I finally let it loose in a match. I never let it loose in a match. It's always in like I always hold it in for a couple weeks in practice, and if someone does something in practice, I freak out, but never in a match. This was the one time I was like, guys, what is going on? And we unpause, and we still just lose out, and I'm like, all right, it was never meant to be. It was never meant to be.
Damn, dude, that's tough.
And so the power of that, you know, cool, calm, and collected leader, although, you know, it didn't work out for us as far as a team, I found a lot of satisfaction in having that, being that voice of reason, and also playing a lights out IGL game. You know, you said it perfectly. Nothing. I could hit a 4K 1v4,
Yeah, 100%.
and that won't feel as good as if I call 8 perfect T rounds in a row. Oh, and a mid rounding in the middle of them too, dude. That is it. You can't describe the amount of joy that gives you as a leader. It's just
Yeah, it's insane.
It's insane, for sure, for sure. All right, 2 last questions. And speaking of success, what does success mean to you? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does success look like for you in the future? And what does it mean to you?
I think success to me is being able to do the work that I find relatively meaningful. Like obviously I don't think any work is always like deeply fucking meaningful. Cut that out. But like but I think just like being able to live life the way I want to while I'm not like struggling financially, and I'm just like I have my partner and I have my kitties, and just again just kind of like living in my own little bubble and being able to support myself and being able to support, you know, things financially as well. That to me is success. Like I don't need Lamborghinis. Like I never cared for that. I don't need like ultra insane things. I don't even really care to be rich, to be honest. Like as long as we can pay bills and we're saving and we have a little bit of money and we have emergency funds, and like, you know, we get to like experience our lives and live and kind of just have this sort of like meaningful existence. Like that to me is like already good enough, honestly. Um, Ideally that's through like if I, you know, my content creation is going well, my stream is going well. That way I'm kind of like in control of my schedule and I can kind of work at my own pace. Like that would be like the ultimate, you know, financial like career success, I guess you could call it. And like working with Raya and like doing, you know, just kind of like balancing what I'm doing now, but just like on a higher scale.
So you'd say success is a multifaceted thing. There's different versions of success in different areas of your life.
Yeah, like I don't need to be like ultra successful in one area. Like as long as, you know, I'm doing well and like things are going well, like that's cool with me. Like I don't have like any insane like I need to be the number one player in the world drive. Like I'm on way more chill stuff now. Like I'm just cool with just chill, just like do my work, make my content, do my watch parties, do my streams, like manage my community. That's good enough with me, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was a point in time where I thought success was signing the piece of paper. And
Yeah, the contract.
Yep, and then you do it and you realize
didn't feel like anything.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it didn't really feel like much. You get to the other side and you think, what next? Oh my God, there's this whole world. This wasn't it. This wasn't the end. Your life doesn't end when you sign the piece of paper and put the clan tag next to your name.
Yep.
You got to keep going. How important is fun?
Fun? In context of my life or in context of like teams and like
all of it?
In way,
all of it.
Just fun and generally speaking.
The fun in competition, fun in your life, fun in content creation, all of it.
I think fun is definitely a factor. Like I wouldn't say it's the 100% factor, but I would say that it is a pretty big factor. Sit down, boy. There you go. He's chilling. He's about to chill. There we go. Perfect. He's look at his belly rubs. Look at him. Look at him. What belly rubs?
Oh, he's so cute. That's a lot of fun. He's having fun.
Yeah, he's chilling. He's having a hell of fun. He's on some chill. Now he's eating my mic. All right, cool. But yeah, I think fun is it's a factor. Like it's definitely a factor. I think in teams it is definitely a factor. Like if you're not enjoying your time, you're not enjoying your team. Like I think it's really hard to succeed in that environment, to be honest. But I think for like my work specifically, like fun is definitely a factor, but it's not like my ultimate motivator. Like it's not like, oh, I'm not having fun, I'm done doing this. But like I do like to feel a sense of fun. Like I do like to feel a sense of like, hey, I'm enjoying my time. Hey, you know, like spending my time this way. Like there it's definitely there, but it's not like the 100%, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, Roy, it's been incredible having you on. You have an amazing mind for competition. It's been a pleasure knowing you all of these years. I find that I'm lucky in my life and in my career to have met you and to know you. You offer an incredible amount of knowledge to the scene. You're a great resource to the Valorant community. I think that you should keep doing what you're doing. I love your content. You make
amazing content as well. There's countless things that I could say that I love about you and how you live your life. And I just want to thank you one last time for being on.
Yeah, dude. Thank you so much for having me, man. I love you too, bro.